Season 5, Episode 42 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bit Stealers. I am Jonathan Lipskin. Sam Fetterman is with me, as always. And boy, do we have a loaded show today. Would like to welcome on Kevin Sweeney of Sports Illustrated back with us once again. Kevin, how are you doing?
What's going on, guys? I think last time I was here, I broke some random mid-major scheduling news.
Did.
Not that I've got any more.
That was a great game too.
It was great, yeah. So, don't know if I can pull off a follow-up act of that, but excited to be with you guys.
Sam, you are now back home.
Yeah, so a lot of games coming up for me. I have a D3 game tomorrow for a story that I'm working on. Then I have high school on Friday, and then a huge high major doubleheader on Saturday. So coming, and then mid major on Sunday. So coming to you at all different levels.
Did you end up getting the UConn stuff sorted out?
That's all sorted out.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So did you want to start with last night?
Yeah, I think we can start with last night, Jonathan.
Okay, well, let's do that because we had a pretty good slate last night. A weaker slate as the week goes on until Saturday with finals going on. But we had the Jimmy V Classic last night. Always a fun 2-game event in New York at MSG. Let's start with the latter game. Arkansas over Michigan, 89-87. It's John Calipari's first signature win at Arkansas. Sam, I'll start with you. General thoughts on the game. How badly did Arkansas need that?
Oh, I mean, we've been talking about Arkansas in a certain way on this podcast to start the season, and they looked so much better in the second 20 minutes, the middle 20 minutes of this game, from the 10-minute mark of the first half to the 10-minute mark of the second half. They looked about as good as you could hope from this team. DJ Wagner looked like the DJ Wagner that was hyped coming out of high school. You bring Jonas Adu in, and hey, Jonas Adu's actually good at basketball. Who would have thought? Boogie Fland had an excellent game as well. So when you kind of combine all of that working for you and Trevon Brazil's best game of the season, you kind of get a look at what Arkansas can be at their best. And you also kind of get a look earlier in this game at what Michigan can look like at their best. I think this was just a great display of basketball. Both teams kind of showing what they can be at their best, and both teams kind of hemming and hawing with punches, and it came down to the wire. And Arkansas comes out with the win in a close game.
Yeah, I mean, I think Arkansas needed it more for sure, especially knowing what they're walking into in the SEC, how much of a grind that schedule is going to be. Had to find a way to get a win of note. This could wind up being a really good win. I'm still skeptical. It's sort of a weird game for me to take strong opinions of either way, because it was sort of 3 different games, right? It wasn't like there wasn't sort of an overarching, oh man, for 40 minutes, Arkansas, just lived in the pain against Michigan, and that says X, Y, and Z, right? That's not really what it was. It was ebbs and flows to the max. So I think I feel confident in saying that when Boogie Fland and DJ Wagner play well, Arkansas is going to be a tough out. I think I feel confident in saying that the best version of Arkansas involves Jonas Adu in there to protect the rim. And I think I feel confident saying that Danny Wolf's going to cause some matchup problems for people, but that Michigan turns the ball over too much, right? I think that all those things are true. Both these teams are interesting but flawed, and we'll see how they take to conference play.
Yeah, Michigan's not really going deep into their bench at all right now. Reuben Jones has been kind of disappointing. They got good minutes out of Will Shetter last night, but that was kind of a matchup where an Arkansas team that we didn't really think was deep coming into this season wasn't really phased as the game went along because Michigan could keep throwing fresh bodies at them. And yeah, I just think if Arkansas is going to end up making the tournament and being a competent team, they're going to long term they're going to need to figure out something with John L. Davis, because he's been downright awful and one of the biggest disappointments in college basketball this season.
Yeah, and back to the kind of the Michigan turning it over too much point. I think that I wonder if by the end of the season, this is the type of game that LJ Kaysen can kind of come in and help relieve some of that pressure. And because if you look at the first couple games of the season, we were getting really excited about him. He hasn't been a big part of the rotation. Last couple of weeks, they've played some tougher competition. But maybe if they can get him going by the end of the season, maybe he's a piece that they can go to. So Danny Wolf isn't tasked with making super high leverage passes on basically every possession for this team, because that 30% turnover rate is not going to look good in Big Ten play if he's not shooting the ball a little bit better, even with how good he is been with Golden in that pick and roll. Teams are going to start to scout that out a little bit and try and force him to make those high leverage passes a lot more. And I think it'll work, but I think that there are things that you can do that teams will find a way to make it so it won't overpower them.
All right, let's talk very briefly about the first game of the Jimmy V Classic. That was Miami and Tennessee. Miami actually played well here for the first 10-ish minutes, and as well as the game started for them, they were still down 13 at the break, and they end up losing by that amount. Jeremy Larenega's team has now lost 7 in a row. Is it 6 or 7?
7. Their only 3 wins are FDU, Binghamton, and Coppin State.
Yeah, I didn't think that Tennessee played their best last night, but this is clearly an elite team. And Sam, they've somehow recreated Dalton Connect-esque with Chaz Lanier, which we didn't think was really that possible.
They did it. Rick Barnes did it again. I was very skeptical all offseason of what Chaz Lanier would be for this Tennessee team. But yeah, like you can, and we were talking about this on the last time I was in this room doing a podcast, that like if Chaz Lanier is shooting the ball at whatever it is, he's at 49% from 3 right now. If he's shooting the ball like that on this type of volume, he's attempting 8 threes a game. Like this is a national championship caliber team. If he's shooting 41%, if he's shooting 38% even. So just the way that he's been playing so far this season with Tennessee, they don't need him to shoot 50% from 3. They need him to just be a guy that they can go to on these pin downs, that they can run offense through, and that can be an efficient scorer. But the fact that he's basically been Dalton Connect has just made Tennessee into one of the 2 or 3 favorites to win the national championship.
Yeah, like Dalton was scarier, right? Because he could touch the paint. It was a little bit more kind of on-ball juice. But, I mean, it's hard to argue what Chaz has been. I mean, I think he's averaging 24 points a game on more than 4 made threes per game against high-major opponents, shooting like over 50% from 3 in those games. Eventually, as you said, it's going to cool down a little bit. But he's been everything. They just sort of I think Tennessee just sort of has this perfect role allocation right now where Ziegler is one of the best point guards in the country, touches the paint, creates for everybody. Meshak's the great glue guy defender. Milicic is a connector. Lanier is a sharpshooter, and Akpara is an elite rim protector and rim runner offensively. They don't have a ton of room for error because they don't have a ton of depth. Part of that is D-Stone Dubar being largely useless. Part of that is the injury to JP Estrella. Part of that is some of the off-season defections and them not wanting to overpay for certain guys to fill in the last spot or 2. But man, this 7 or 8 really, really works. And Chaz Lanier has been a big part of that. He has been everything they could have wanted and more. He's in much better shape than I thought he was when I saw him at the G League camp. He was heavier. They've gotten him into better game shape. And at the end of the day, he's a gamer, man. Like he's super competitive. He's a big time shot maker, and has done it kind of regardless of level. I think that was the big concern, and he's proven that he can do it at any level. Presumably he can do it at the next level too. It's time to start talking about him as a very serious NBA guy.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, I just think it's, I continue to say this pretty much every time we talk about Tennessee, but it's impressive how Rick Barnes has adjusted his philosophy over the last couple years. This Tennessee team didn't really shoot a lot of threes in his first, 8-ish years, 7-ish years at Tennessee. Now they're getting them off. They shoot it at a high percentage, and he kind of got away from sort of that those mid-range shots that Tennessee would take a lot when they had the year before Connect. I watched them just a ton that year, but yeah, this is an offense that has continued to evolve, and their defense has stayed elite even with the adjustments.
And the other thing to note about this team, they are, as a team, 70% at the rim right now. Just the amount of looks that Zakai Ziegler and the guards are creating for Akpara and for Cade Phillips down low for just easy, wide open dunks or lobs It's really remarkable to watch just the way this team has created offense, the difference between what it was 2 years ago and what it is now.
All right, should we get into some of these Big Ten games from last night?
Shall we?
Yeah, we'll start with Wisconsin, Illinois. This was a pretty good game from start to finish. It was fast. Teams were getting up and down. Teams were making tough shots. You know, Kasparis Jakachunas continues to be just a complete revelation and looks the part of not just a lottery pick, but a top 5 or 10 pick. If you want to stretch it that far, 24 points, 5 assists, grabbed 6 rebounds. Illinois' offense right now is literally just ball screening for him and either popping or rolling, and a lot of the time it's popping. And, Ivicic wasn't his best last night, but they got a good game from Boswell. Trey White really stepped up last night, got to the line a ton. Kevin, I'll start with you on this one. What were your overall thoughts on this game? Wisconsin obviously started their season really hot, but has kind of slowed down here a little bit.
But, KJ was incredible, and he will continue to be incredible because he's one of the best players in the country. He's one of the best basketball players in the world that's not playing in the NBA right now. I don't think that's a stretch. He's like the engine to an elite team without question. But to me, the big story really was Boswell and Trey White, both having arguably their best games in Illini uniforms. Boswell with 19, 6 assists, White with 23, 8 boards. Like, the thing that was most notable watching them play Northwestern, on Friday up in Evanston was they generated legitimately no paint touches, especially in the second half. It was, it felt weird to say like Illinois didn't belong in that game because they were up by 10 with like 8 minutes to go, but their winning was entirely the function of KJ making ridiculous shots that kept them in it and just couldn't keep up for 45 minutes. Like, they got nothing around the rim, and Wisconsin's a different team. Stephen Carell is not Matt Nicholson in terms of like big physical guy, and their wings aren't as big and physical as Northwestern's. But I thought it was a really encouraging sight to see White and Boswell be more aggressive. The game was played at a little bit higher pace, which is something that Illinois is going to want to do. But it was a good reminder to me of why I think I have been, and a lot of people should be, very high on this Illinois team, because they've got a scary recipe when you have as a lead ball screen guy as Kasparis and guys who can attack the rim, a big who can space it, and Ivicic, and then we'll see what Hummerkaus can do. He's in a bit of a slump right now, but it's a guy that obviously we know can space the floor.
Yeah, I wrote Rise and Shine this morning on how the Big Ten Freshman of the Year was shared by Owen Freeman and Mackenzie Mbako. Those guys would be like the 5th best freshman in the Big Ten, maybe this year. There are 3 freshmen in the Big Ten playing at a legitimate All-American level right now. Jakachunas is one of them. It seems like every game he is doing something ridiculous. And you did mention it with Illinois. They have not been good getting into the paint. They are dead last in the Big Ten in percentage of possessions that end in a shot attempt at the rim, which is something that they need to fix. But again, when you have Trey White and when you have Kyle and Boswell playing their best basketball, those guys took 17 free throws in this game. Illinois took 25 free throws in this game. That is something that Illinois will be better when those guys are great, obviously, because you're going to be better when more players play well. And again, I've just been really impressed with this team. They're long, they're athletic, and they're also fairly smart for a team that has guys that haven't played college basketball playing in such big roles.
Do we think that the freshmen in the Big Ten could maybe help? And I know it's tough to ask this on December 11th, but do we think that the freshmen in the Big Ten, being as talented as they are, can help the tourney success?
No doubt. That was exactly where I thought you were going with that question. And I just look at the talent level of these freshmen in the Big Ten. Right now Rutgers might not make the NCAA tournament, but like you look at Illinois and you look at what Derek Queen is doing over at Maryland and the ceiling that Jace Richardson could bring at Michigan State and how good those young guys have evolved throughout the year. I think that the overall talent level in the Big Ten feels better than it has been in the last couple of years. Maybe just in terms of like the ability to just kind of, I mean, maybe it's a little bit disrespectful to like what Zach Edey was in college because he was unreal. But like it didn't look like this. It was a lot more of the just post him up or run a ball screen for him versus you have a guard that can do this or what Derek Queen is doing, which is great, obviously worse than Edey, but different and brings a different element. So I do think that there are things that the Big Ten has this year that they haven't had. And again, Purdue made the national championship game last year, so it's not like it didn't work out for Zach Edey.
I mean, look, I think it's just guard play. I think it was a thing last year. Look, at the end of the day, like there were really good guards in the Big Ten. Illinois had Damask and Shannon. They went to the Elite Eight. Northwestern had Boo Buie. They won a tournament game, and if they hadn't played UConn, could have won multiple tournament games. And then there was some other, Michigan State with Tyson Walker. They were in that game with Carolina until the very end, had an opportunity to win it, and obviously, it got away from them late, but they were very much in that game until the final, 8 to 10 minutes. So, I think that the league has sort of been undergoing this transition. Not that teams don't want bigs that can post up and score the basketball that way, but I think you have to have shot making juice, and they have it in droves. They had it last year. They have it even more so this year. As you said, sort of just what it looks like. Like I don't think this is necessarily a Big Ten thing versus fast. I think it's just a college basketball thing. Like there aren't a lot of guys we can remember playing college basketball like Dylan Harper. There aren't a lot of guys as good as Kasparis Jakašonis. Like legitimately, the Kasparis Jakašonis of the last 4 decades has never set foot in college basketball because that guy's never come over from Europe. Like the talent level across the board is different, but the Big Ten are really tapping into that, and that should be fun to watch into March certainly.
Sam, any other games that we want to discuss from yesterday, or do we want to get into some Sunday stuff?
Just kind of a shout out to Cornell going on the road across the country during finals week and beating Cal. A.K. Okereke was awesome. Cornell in this game, they only made they shot 28% from 3, and they took 32 threes, and then they still go and score 1.2 points per possession because that's how much their spacing just opens up the game for everything inside. It's really impressive to watch what they can do. They're 7-3. They are probably this. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they turned out the best team in the Ivy League. There are the top 3 in the Ivy League right now: Yale, Princeton, and Cornell. I'm not really sure how I would order them. I mean, Princeton is the most talented when you look at that trio of Xavier Lee, Caden Pierce, and Dalen Davis, but there's no depth there. Yale still has some questions I feel like they need to answer on the defensive side of the ball, and Cornell, to me so far, just looks like they've had a great. It feels like the same thing I've been watching for the last couple of years at Cornell, and I mean that in a very, very complimentary way. And also, it was a big night for Brown. They go and win at Rhode Island, double overtime. Brown's now 7-3. They've won 6 in a row. And then Columbia's 10-1. They're probably there's a good chance I'm at their next 2 games, which are the 28th against Fairfield and then the 30th against Rutgers. There's a good chance they walk into Ivy League play at 11-2. That would be a really good start for them, and they have the backcourt with Geronimo Rubio de la Rosa, Avery Brown, and Kenny Nolan, who have all been tremendous this year.
All right, I'm going to start with our last Sunday slate with the game I was at, Mizzou, Kansas. 76-67 is the final. I've heard plenty about the Mizzou side of this because, I go there and talk to people. But I want to talk about the Kansas side of this because I think it came out that Kansas has lost 9 of their last 10 on the road or something like that, or 8 of their last 10. Whatever it is, Kansas has mightily struggled on the road over the last, 10 or so games, and dating back to last season. And this was no different.
That team last year, we know they couldn't win at Glenbrook North.
No, they couldn't. They lose. Kansas drops 2 games on the road. They get court stormed twice last week. This one felt a little more notable just because it was a rivalry game and they didn't really get up for it until the second half, even a little bit into the second half. But Sam, like, does Kansas just like have the exact same problems that they did a year ago? And not when it even comes to like the winning on the road stuff, but like they still have no wing scoring from what it seems like right now.
I get that. And I feel that when I'm watching it, but like, I know what AJ Storr, what Zeke Mayo, and Rylan Griffin can do. Like, those guys need to be better for them. And I talked about this on Sunday night. They scored a combined 9 points in this game. Zeke Mayo has had his moments throughout the year, but Storr and Griffin have been mostly quiet. If those guys aren't going to be high-level contributors, then yeah, it's the same stuff that we saw last year for this team because basically everything that we said about Kansas this offseason was it's the core of last year and what was winning, plus the wing scoring additions, plus the extra bonus scoring and the depth. If that depth and scoring isn't there, then we're looking at the same thing. And that's kind of what we were seeing. Obviously, in this game, it was the turnovers that they just couldn't take care of the basketball. And Mizzou just had a really good game plan for that. But yeah, you need more out of Mayo and Storr and Griffin, because if you don't get that, you're going to be looking at a team that is going to have to shorten that rotation to a point where it's a problem like it was last year.
Look, I think to me it's less like I think a lot of people are looking for like the position group to blame. I think it's more just sort of like stylistically the ways you're bent into to play with DeJuan Harris, Hunter Dickinson, and KJ Adams as a core. Like right now, Kansas is 361st nationally in free throw rate. They're 321st nationally in 3-point rate. And they're 235th nationally in offensive rebound rate. I don't know how you possibly build an elite team with those three statistics all together. Like Bill Self's great, but there's only so much you can do. Like I think you start to look and start to wonder if this core is just sort of fatally flawed. Maybe that's too critical, but like Hunter Dickinson's taking a lot of jump shots right now. Hunter Dickinson just flat out has. How about this for a stat? Since the North Carolina game, Hunter Dickinson has taken more than 3 free throws in a game once, like in a month. Hunter Dickinson, 7'2", one of the best post scorers in the country, legitimately cannot get to the free throw line. That's a problem. They need to find ways to generate easy offense because right now there's a lot of DeJuan Harris floaters. There's a lot of Dickinson either in the mid range or stretching into the 3 or kind of funky back to the basket, 10 feet away. Like they just don't generate a lot of easy offense, which they can beat people because they're very talented across the board. But you go on the road, you go in a tough environment, you're already not getting calls. You potentially give up more free throws, which they certainly did against Mizzou. And the recipe just gets harder and harder. So they got some stuff to figure out. They got to find a way to just play more physical. I don't think it requires, AJ Storr's magically, 17 point per game Wisconsin AJ Storr. That'd be great. But I don't think that's the thing that changes the game. I think it's more right now they're just playing a style of basketball that's probably not cohesive with winning at the elite level that Kansas expects to.
And I don't think you have to be married to playing those three guys like as much as they are. Like they have enough depth to take 2 of them off the floor at once, to take definitely one of them off the floor at once, and kind of open up the game for a little bit more of that space for the guys like Mayo and Storr and Griffin, who are the wing scoring types. And obviously Zeke Mayo can also be a ball handler. We saw it at South Dakota State. So I do think that they're maybe marrying themselves to that and limiting the transfer guards in that right as well.
Yeah, I also think that, DeJuan Harris was the starting point guard for a national championship team. And DeJuan Harris and KJ Adams played together a lot on a team that was a 1 seed. Like, there are versions of that pairing that work. And right now they haven't figured out how that pairing works or how to get back to that, I should say. But, like, one thing I noticed, and I don't have this in front of me like at all statistic wise, but one thing I noticed is like it doesn't feel like Dickinson is getting many paint touches at all. And it's not just that he can't get to the free throw line, it's that Kansas isn't running stuff to get him to the free throw line. And like they're so insistent on bringing him out to the perimeter and using him in their dribble handoff stuff, and that's just not what he does best. So I think there's going to need to be schematic changes, because if Hunter Dickinson is not an elite offensive player, he's not a great player because his defense is not good.
Jonathan, if you look at the first couple of years of his career, percentage of possessions that were post-ups, his freshman year, 48.4. His sophomore year, 39. His junior year, 49.6. Last year, 32.7. This year, 28.1. Is it any wonder that Kansas's offense is better with him off the floor when they're not using him the way that he's been used best when he's had great offense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They were pretty damn good 2 years ago when KJ Adams was playing a lot at the 5. And I know that,
and that
they wanted to bring in a bigger guy so he didn't have to guard 5s all the time.
And that opened up for a lot of that Jalen Wilson line drives. I feel like you can go to certain lineups that can get guys like Store those line drives.
All right, let's go to UConn, Texas, because this is a UConn team that had a good week. They struggled obviously in Maui, going 0-3, but you bounce back. You get a win over Baylor. You get a win over Texas on the road. Sam, talk to me about your Huskies.
I mean, just offensively, the amount of space that they created in this game was crazy. Texas looked like they had no idea how to guard what UConn was doing, and that it felt like a UConn basketball game just watching it. Yes, obviously the fouls are still a big issue in this front court, but they generated great looks. They generated layups on paint touches. They generated open threes for Caravan. They generated some shots for Solo Ball, and they were pounding the glass. It was Hassan Diarra played really well. They didn't really have a ton of mistakes for long stretches of this game. They did have a couple stretches where they were a little bit more mistake prone, but the fact of the matter was this UConn team with Alex Caravan on the floor and with Solo Ball shooting the way that he is and with Diarra comfortable, that's going to be UConn at their best.
Look, I don't have a lot to say here other than that Dan Hurley's team played Rodney Terry's team, and everyone can guess what was going to happen when that happened. So that's all I got.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I'm going to 30 games over the next 32-ish days, something like that. The one I'm most excited for by landslide is Saturday night at Madison Square Garden. And Jonathan, unless we have anything more to go over from Sunday, you want to get right into that?
No, I actually just want to real quick point out how I think, Kevin, you might have tweeted about this back in like August, Texas's non-conference schedule. They have now lost the 2 marquee games that they play in non-con, Ohio State and UConn. Weren't really that competitive in either of them. They did knock off the mighty Syracuse Orange in St. Joe's.
This sounds familiar. It was the same thing that they did last year.
The other teams they played in Ken Palm, or I guess they beat NC State too, but the other bye games that they had in Ken Palm, in 353, 361, 364, 346, they have 193, 362, 340, and 258 coming up before the new year. This team's going to have to play really well in conference, in a really tough conference, to make the NCAA tournament, because they're, we've seen teams get knocked for their bad non-conference schedules before, and that's sort of where this Texas team is heading.
The one thing I'd say is just like, I don't know that they'll actually get knocked. Like, I don't know. They win these next 4. They're 11-2 heading into SEC play. They go 8-10 in those games. As Ken Palm projects, they're 19-12. And people say, well, they won 8 games in the SEC against, almost guaranteed like 5 of those would be quad 1. Like, that's just the way that the league is scripted out right now.
Yeah, that's true.
And they'll be like a 20-win high major team with, 5 or 6 quad 1 wins and probably no bad losses. And you're like, well, no reason not to put Texas on the 8-9 line, right? Like, I mean, look, someone's got to lose these games. At the end of the day, like, it's easy to say, like, you know, Texas can go 8-10, and Georgia's going to go 8-10, and Oklahoma, they can go 8-10. Like, so realistically, probably one or two of these teams is going to fall off a cliff and go 5-13, and it wouldn't shock me if that was Texas, but it also wouldn't shock me at all if they're just sort of like safely in the field, regardless of the bad schedule.
Yeah, and not to disrespect Rodney Terry at all, but there are a lot of coaches in the SEC that are better than him, and I think that doesn't exactly help the case. Like if Texas drops two more of these games and goes 6-12 instead of 8-10, that could be really dangerous territory.
Jonathan, we could wake up on January 19th with 0-5 Texas in the SEC.
What are their first 5 games?
At Texas A&M, home against Auburn, home against Tennessee, at Oklahoma, at Florida. They are currently underdogs in all 5 of them.
Yeah, I mean when they Mizzou comes to town, that's an automatic loss. So 0-6. All right, let's get to the big Saturday slate. This has been marked down as the best non-conference day of college basketball all offseason.
Yeah, I mean, just because like last year, this was kind of 2 weeks of games. Like you had the games that were on December 9th, and then the games that were on December 16th, I think it was. This year, it's basically all smushed into one because the college football playoff is now an extra week.
Yeah. So let's start with Gonzaga UConn because Sam, you're going to be there. This is a Gonzaga team that just last weekend blew a pretty large lead to Kentucky. We talked about that on the Saturday night show. And now they'll get a chance on the other coast to bounce back. So, Sam, what are you expecting out of this one?
Everybody in the UConn program right now is obsessed with the number 3. Obviously, three-peat. You go down to Maui, you lose 3 games. You come back, and now you have 3 crucially important games against 3 games that will probably end up being quadrant 1, including 2 that will be very, very good games throughout the season. And this is the 3rd one. If UConn can go and win all 3 of them, and that would just be a really impressive kind of, hey, maybe we can write Maui off a little bit more to the fact that, hey, they shot the ball really poor. They Memphis shot whatever it was in that first game, and then the second game Colorado shot whatever it was, and then in the 3rd game they were just at that point they
wanted to go home.
They were out of it. So again, nothing saying that didn't happen. That absolutely happened, and it should be not, and UConn should be knocked for it. But if UConn can come out and beat Gonzaga at Madison Square Garden, it will. I've already kind of brainstormed what I'm going to write from that game if UConn ends up winning, and it's going to be like on the angle, like the catharsis, like the cathartic feeling of what Madison Square Garden would be like that night if UConn is able to pull it off. It's like, yes, this feels right. This feels like UConn basketball, kind of coming back from what would happen in Maui, and it would really be just a huge win for what UConn does. But Gonzaga, the Gonzaga's favored in this game, according to Ken Pom. 62% chance to win. They are the much better defensive team. They have been they're right now number 3 in the country in 3-point defense, and UConn does not really have a ton of options on the inside with how much foul trouble they've been getting in. So UConn is a 3-point shooting team. They shot a lot of threes last year as well, but they're shooting more threes this year than they did over the last 2 years because they aren't quite as good at getting to the foul line. They're not quite as good at scoring on the inside. So I know their 2-point percentage is higher, but I mean, they like half of their 2s are probably Samson Johnson dunks, and like those aren't as easy to generate as they were for Klingon last year, or not half, but like I think points on the inside are a lot harder to generate when you don't have Tristan Newton and you don't have Donovan Klingon there, versus now you have Samson Johnson who and Terrace Reed has been great, and I think if UConn is going to win this game, Terrace Reed has to stay out of foul trouble, has to give them some really good minutes and I think he's going to have to be that throughout the season for the Huskies. And we didn't see much of him against Texas, but I think Jalen Stewart and or Jaden Ross, when UConn wins big games, those two will probably have a hand in it at some rate.
Yeah, I mean, look, to me, it's a scary game for UConn, just in the sense of like Gonzaga is really good. They're going to be hungry. Feel like they let a game go on Saturday against Kentucky. Feel like they're not where they want to be with the 2 losses here in the last couple of weeks. And stylistically have a lot of things that can pose problems. As you mentioned, the foul trouble with the bigs will be a big issue against the EKs and the Huffs and all the guys that they can post score with. The mobility and the scoring ability of these guards and their ability to get in the paint, which has been a problem for UConn's guards, keeping guys in front. That would be concerning to me, right? Like, I think all those things scare me, but I also know that UConn can shoot the cover off the ball, and I don't want to play UConn ever at the Garden. Like, those 2 factors are like very, very real in my mind. So it's a fascinating game. Probably the game of the day. I think Gonzaga wins it just because I think they need it. But as you said, there's some pressure on both teams, right? Because the standard is so high, right? If the standard at Gonzaga is with this group is be in the mix for a 1 seed, be in the mix to win a national championship, but they got to win one of these games. And if you're UConn, if you want any hope of keeping that chase for the 1 seed, chase for the control of the path that Hurley talked about all of last year and has already been thinking about again for this year, you got to find a way to win this one. As you said, you can start to forget Maui, or at least neutralize some of the damage you did in Maui if you find a way to win this game.
Yeah, it's a team that in UConn that doesn't shoot a lot of 2s versus a team in Gonzaga that allows a lot of 2s. So, kind of really interesting chess match there to see who can gain the upper hand. But yeah, like this is a UConn team that after Maui, the mentality should have switched, and so far it looks like it has. Baylor's not a bad team. The game was at home, but UConn played well in that one, or at least better. And then Texas, we just mentioned it. I do think that like Gonzaga is the better team, but traveling across the country to play UConn and at MSG in a crowd that's going to be all UConn fans scares me.
Yeah, I the vibe right now, I don't, it doesn't feel like UConn's going to lose this game. It just doesn't. Like, my brain is telling me Gonzaga has the matchup advantage, but my brain is also telling me, like, the feeling of this game, that you will be able to feel it, or I will be able to feel it the moment I walk up those stairs from Penn Station in the Madison Square Garden. UConn's not losing that game. Like, it's not happening.
All right, next one to get to on Tuesday is Tennessee, Illinois. Tennessee's undefeated. Just talked about both of these teams and how they played last night. But this is an Illinois team. This is a big moment for these freshmen against this Tennessee defense. I feel like, if there's one team that can probably handle and throw a lot of things at KJ, it's Tennessee.
Yeah, Jemai Meshack is sort of the ideal guard to go try to stop someone like Kasparis Hakachonis. I would be scared of that, but I also trust KJ to go make tough shots. This building's going to be on fire. I've been to a lot of big games in Champaign. I will be at this one. I have a feeling this will be as good an atmosphere as has been in that gym in really quite some time. And Tennessee is going to walk into a much different world than Louisville or Virginia or Baylor, any of these games they played so far, when they've dominated high major opponents. So I would not be at all surprised if Tennessee does lose this one, just from the standpoint of Illinois is a very good home team. They have the shot making talent to kind of score over Tennessee's defense, not have to get to the rim as much. But and Ivisic is scary, especially if he can pull Akpara away from the rim. Right, that's obviously a huge part of how they play. quite honestly, I wouldn't be totally shocked if Tennessee messed around with potentially having Okpara guard Trey White when Trey White's in the game, and put Milicic, who's 6'10", has the length, to try to guard Avicic and live with Avicic in post-score world. So yeah, we'll see. It's gonna be a fun one. I'm really excited about it. Going there, and I'm gonna go to Indianapolis in the morning for Texas A&M Purdue. Then bounce over to Champaign in the afternoon for that one. So should be a great one. One of the best games of the year. It's gonna be a long day, a lot of driving. Podcast recommendations needed, but it should be good.
I would say listen to this, but
I'll be there. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
Sam, any additional thoughts?
I mean, I feel like this could be like a Will Riley game. He hasn't really had that breakout game against like a high major opponent where he's really. I know that Alabama game he scored 18 points, but like those were all like in garbage time. It felt like. Could this be one of those games where if Tennessee kind of commits to really trying to stop Jakachonis, that it can give Riley some shots on the outside? I know I've talked about Will Riley before, and how I'm not 100% sure about like how it was going to translate immediately, but I do think that there are certain matchups that I think will be games that Will Riley's too talented to not have like a big game against a high major team and helping them win to this point in the season. I think this could be one of those games for him. But Tennessee, again, would anyone be truly shocked if Tennessee just goes in there, Lanier bangs a couple threes, and it's 16-4 within the first 6 minutes of this game, and Tennessee wins by like 7.
How desperate is Arizona for a win this weekend? I think they might be more desperate right now than pretty much any team that was thought of as maybe a top 10 team coming into the season. It's UCLA, Arizona, two former conference foes in Phoenix.
Glad we still get this game.
What'd you say?
Glad we still get this game.
Yeah. I wish it was played on campus, but they'll play it in Phoenix. Arizona has played one game since Atlantis. They lost twice there to Oklahoma and West Virginia, beat Davidson. They've lost to Wisconsin. They've lost to Duke. They sit at 4-4, and it's been disappointing. Feels kind of like an understatement right now for them. It just doesn't look like the things that I thought Arizona would do well. They are not doing well, and I would love to see some course correction from them on Saturday.
I mean, it's a monster game because like Ken Palm already has Arizona going 17-14. And that's as the team that they say is a top 30 team in the sport, which is, I mean, partly the Big 12, partly it's their schedule. They got to find a way. I was just messing around right now with the T rank feature. Like if they like right now it gives them a 80% chance of making the tournament. If I pencil that in as a loss, let's see how that changes their bid percentage. I bet it changes it pretty substantially.
Yeah, they would be leaving non-conference play without a big win.
Like it's a leverage game, without a doubt. Yeah, like that. They're saying that result, if you pencil that as a loss instead of a win, swings their NCAA tournament percentage from 80% to 53.7. And now is that like that's an overreaction? Like that's a crazy swing for any game, but I do think it illustrates just how important that game is for them, because not only would you, again, leaving non-conference without a big win, but leaving non-conference play with a minimum of 5 losses in a world in a Big 12 where you could very easily be 12-8 and all of a sudden you're 18-13, right? And 12-8 would be better than they're playing right now. Quite frankly, they've lost every game of note that they've played. So yeah, it's a huge one against a UCLA team that's found its strides, playing really well. Its defense has been phenomenal. That has turned people over, which can be a concern. Fascinating to see that matchup, but Arizona, absolutely needs it.
Jonathan, kind of We haven't really talked a ton about UCLA this year. I kind of want to hear your thoughts on what UCLA is looking like right now. Jonathan.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said Kevin. They obviously got a massive win on Sunday against Oregon on the road. And, the guard play has been pretty good so far. You're getting exactly what you thought you would out of Kobe Johnson, which isn't surprising many people. And, you don't have like these, you're not placing guys this year in roles that they shouldn't be in. Andrews and Mack feel more ready for not high leverage roles, but like secondary roles as scorers where they can be efficient. And like so far, not having like a true center hasn't really hurt them. I don't know if Arizona is gonna really expose that. I don't think like Awaka has been Awaka this season, but Krivas has kind of been disappointing, and I know he was hurt to start the season. But like this team has kind of been like what I thought they would be a little bit, just better. Like I thought they'd be able to pressure the ball on the perimeter. I thought they would be deep. I just didn't think they would look that good against Oregon on Sunday. And obviously they have the New Mexico loss too, but I'm struggling. They're 15th in KenPom right now. I don't know if I'm ready to call this a top 15 team in the country yet.
Yeah, I mean, they are on pick and roll ball handler possessions. They're forcing a turnover on 31% of them. I'm not sure how sustainable that is. I would have to go back and kind of watch the film. But again, like they've played Washington at home is like Washington is not very good. So they've played two real games of note here, both of them away from home. Oregon, which was they won on a bank shot. New Mexico, they lost, and New Mexico just straight up looked like the better team throughout that game. Again, UCLA 15 to KenPom. I agree with you that I don't feel comfortable saying they're a top 15 team in the country. And again, I'm not even sure I would say I'd feel comfortable saying that if they won this game against Arizona. But I definitely think that they are doing things better than what I thought they were going to be doing. It's just that, hey, is Tyler their number one guy in offensive usage right now is Tyler Bilodeau. I'm not really sure how good I think he is. I'm not really sure how good I think a lot of these guys on this team are. And I still think that at some point something could catch up to them in that. And I'm not there yet with UCLA, but they've looked really good.
All right, let's get to the next one. What do I want to go to here? Let's go Creighton, Alabama. I know that's a little bit down on fan match because Alabama's a projected 11-point favorite, but Creighton has looked better over the last week or so. They're not exactly healthy right now, and they're not ever going to be fully healthy this season, but they have played better. You got the Kansas win. They kind of blew out UNLV in the second half, but this is kind of a different animal, a team that can go really deep, a team that has played much better than either Kansas or UNLV in Alabama. Sam, I'll start with you here. How does Creighton stay in this and possibly pull off an upset in Tuscaloosa?
It's going to be really difficult because they're going to need a lot more. Because without Pop Isaacs, this team loses a lot of the dynamism that they really had. And last year they had the shot creation from Shireman and from Alexander, and we weren't really sure looking at this roster in the offseason how they replaced that. Isaacs was doing a good job. They are going to need big games, big performances down the road and early now from Jamia Neal. Jamia Neal was the KenPom game MVP in their win against UNLV, and I think they need him to be that type of player throughout the season if they're going to be able to win these up games. And it's going to be really difficult. I mean, Alabama we know how good this Alabama team is, but this is also just a fun clash of styles, and it has been over the last couple of years because you look at a team in Creighton that is one of the best defenses in the country at forcing tough jumpers, versus Alabama, who is the face of the dunks and threes in college basketball. So, and I think this year Alabama just kind of has a clear talent edge in pretty much every department. And I think they'll be able to kind of assert their will more so than Creighton will in this game.
Yeah, obviously playing it in Tuscaloosa makes it a lot harder. I do think the plan for Creighton is going to have to kind of be to throw the kitchen sink at them, right? Maybe you mess around with a couple zone possessions like you did against Kansas. I know that Alabama's not a team I want to zone, but like I just don't see how you win the game playing it normal. Like if this turns into who has the better players, Alabama's going to win by a lot. Yeah, like I think you gotta junk it up 1-3-1, 2-3, extend the pressure, shoot a bunch of threes, like whatever you have to do, try to hang around and apply some pressure. Because again, every game Alabama has played that has been sort of a who's got better players bowl. They have won and have looked quite good doing it. So yeah, big game. I think important for Creighton to stay around. But excited to see Bama with young blood back in tow, and hopefully he plays significant minutes.
Yeah, and then you kind of get on that, but like if you're going to go to those zones, you really got to commit to it, because if you miscommunicate on some of those possessions, like Alabama's going to get open three after open three.
Absolutely. I mean, and to a degree, you might have to live with that a little bit, just because at the end of the day, like, you know, you don't want to get beat with paint touches, but that's what Alabama's going to get. But at least if you're funneling guys to the rim, then Kalkbrenner can try to defend it. It'll be fascinating. Good matchup.
Yeah, it's weird. You didn't. If Creighton drops to 7-4 here, which is more likely than not, you know, you'd think that like you have like a whole bunch of opportunities in the Big East, but that's really not the way it's turning out right now. And they have a good home court. They'll win plenty of games in conference at home against both bad and good teams. But it's just, you're probably not getting as many quad one opportunities in conference as you thought before the season. All right. Marquette, speaking of the Big East, Marquette on Saturday plays at Dayton. This is a really interesting one to me because I think people have sort of just forgot about Dayton since they played really well at Maui, and now here's a really good opportunity at home for you against the Marquette team that is a projected 1 seed right now by some. I know it's early, but Golden Eagles have played super well, have some really quality wins. And Sam, I think Dayton could absolutely steal this one at home.
This might be the biggest opportunity of the season in the A-10 right now, because you get a top 5 team, in my opinion, in your building for what has so far, according to KenPom, been the best team in the A-10. Yeah, this is a massive opportunity for the A-10. If the A-10 wins this game, it puts if Dayton wins this game, it puts them at 9-2 with wins over Northwestern, UConn, and Marquette in non-conference play, and they have another chance next week against Cincinnati. And it would put them in a real situation where they're threatening for another at-large, and that would just be huge for the A-10, because this year, right now, there's a bunch of teams that look like they can be threatening for the at-large, considering, Loyola is undefeated right now. The metrics aren't quite there for them yet, but VCU has the loss to Seton Hall, but they have good metrics, and they have an 8-2 record. They still need to pick up some big wins, but just if Dayton can turn into a game that will be quad one for everybody throughout the season, that would be huge. And again, just on the floor in this game, I do think that this is a fun matchup because of what we've seen from Dayton's guard play this year compared to kind of what we expected. Didn't really know how they would line up, but when you get Malachi Smith playing as well as Malachi Smith has played at any point in his career, it's really made for a Dayton team that's hard to stop. They are one of the best. You kind of expect it, a team that has 3 legitimate point guards, a team that is going to not really turn it over that much, and a team that's going to have a lot of assists. But Dayton has been one of the best in the country in terms of assist to turnover ratio this year, and they're generating good looks for a lot of different guys. Enoch Cheeks is hitting 47% of his threes. Malachi Smith is hitting 2/3 of his threes. Nate Santos is hitting 45% of his threes. So I don't know how much. I don't know if that's going to be able to continue. I don't know if it needs to continue, but maybe in this game it might, because it's like just how good this Marquette team is, and they are awesome.
Yeah, they have the guards to handle the pressure from Marquette. The constant ball pressure that Shaka's teams will bring. That's valuable. The shooting will be important without a doubt. I think the one thing I would also note in this matchup is, there's Marquette's not going to have the big to kind of lean on. I think when you play an A10 team, I think the kind of initial reaction will be like, all right, like, could we be bigger and more physical? That's not really what Marquette is. So they're going to have to outplay them. Again, it's a huge opportunity for Dayton. The building's going to be incredible. Just sort of curious to see how a team that really relies on ball pressure in Dayton themselves. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing that people haven't noticed is how important Dayton's defense has been in this equation, especially on the ball. How they deal with a Cam Jones, Stevie Mitchell, guys like that who are so good with the ball in their hands. That to me is probably more interesting than Marquette's pressure defense, which is obviously the big story in most nights.
Yeah, don't really think I have anything to add there. Let's go to the early game on Saturday, or at least one of them. Clemson, Memphis. Sam, we've talked a lot about this Clemson team and how much we like them. Memphis, I don't want to say, I don't want to throw shade, but in very, Memphis fashion, took a not so great loss.
They took a Memphis. They did a Memphis.
Those, you don't get those Maui rims and things take a turn for maybe not the worst, but certainly worse without the T. This is at Clemson. Memphis obviously schedules a ton of great non-con opportunities, but it feels like Memphis at this point, even with how they played early in the season, with the wins they have already, they could use another road win like this because the American kind of stinks.
Jonathan, I think Clemson kind of has everything that they need to handle this Memphis team. Memphis? What does Memphis do really well? They're shooting the ball really well from three, and I think Clemson has some guys that can really defend on the perimeter and prevent those good looks. And Memphis likes to throw it inside. They aren't a heavy 3-point reliant offense, but Memphis also they're not a very good 2-point offense in terms of their percentage. They're 251st in that. And when you're 315th in 3-point rate, but third in 3-point efficiency, I feel like something is going to have to give at some point. And I think Clemson's defenders are good enough to kind of keep Memphis off the foul line enough. I mean, Clemson is a good defense in terms of keeping teams off the foul line. Teams have really difficult times getting good looks against Clemson. And I just think that Clemson, they're 7-point Ken Baum favorites in this game. I would not be surprised if they double that.
Look, it's important. I wouldn't say this game necessarily is that important for Memphis. It's a tough road game. Obviously, it'd be a huge win if they get it. But this stretch is, I mean, this 4 games will sort of define their season. At Clemson, at UVA, home Mississippi State, home Ole Miss. Like 2-2 or better, and I think they probably coast to the NCAA tournament. 1-3 or worse, like watch out. Like if they, if they can't take care of business against these other high level teams, you're gonna be able to start poking holes in their resume pretty quickly. Again, the neutral UConn win, the neutral Michigan State win, those should be pretty helpful. How powerful they'll be, we'll see. So interested to see how they handle the tests. A team that has struggled to defensive rebound playing against a Clemson team that is excellent on the boards overall. That would be scary to me. But PJ Haggerty's a dude, man. Like he's gonna get what he wants, and I'm not sure Clemson has a guy to really stop him.
Isaiah Miranda is in the game for Green Bay right now. Hasn't played in like a month. So
what's the score?
Milwaukee is up 33-24. They just hit a 3 from the top of the key. That was I don't know who that is.
That experiment is going exactly how we all expected it to.
Yeah. So that's a fun one right now. I've got 5 games on, which is too much during a podcast, but yeah.
5 games on during this slate is absolutely insane.
5 games on is too much not during a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have them on just for the sake of like white noise, honestly. It's Bryant St. John's on the big screen, UMass Lowell LIU, which is, by the way, a 4-point game with 8.5 to go at UML. Duquesne, Maine. Maine is up 6. Pitt, Eastern Kentucky. Like I'm not really watching them. I just kind of have them on.
Kevin, you're going to be at A&M Purdue on Saturday morning from Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. Texas A&M has they've had their ups and downs, but they certainly have had a better non-con than they have the last couple years, which is really intriguing considering how well they scout and play against SEC teams. I know the conference is different than it has been even the past couple years, but if A&M can somehow go to Indy and steal one here, you're going to enter conference play, which you've done very well in over the last couple years with wins over Ohio State, Creighton, Rutgers, Wake Forest, Texas Tech, and Purdue.
No, they've got some meat on the bone even before this game. Obviously, an opportunity for more. Stylistically, given Purdue's struggles with Marquette and Penn State, the 2 ball pressure teams on their schedule, I think playing A&M, who sort of specializes in that, specializes in being super aggressive, being super athletic. It's an interesting contrast of styles. Obviously, same time, A&M trying to defend Braden Smith, trying to defend Purdue as a whole, probably a big challenge. Purdue's been pretty darn good in that arena in Gainbridge and in downtown Indy in the past. I would expect them to continue to be pretty good. But we'll see, man. It's an interesting tilt and an important one, I think, for Purdue, because if Purdue can leave, I'm assuming they're losing to Auburn. Maybe they'll pull it off, but for sake of argument, let's say they lose to Auburn. If they can leave non-conference, that'd be 10-3, or it would be, I guess, because they've split the Big Ten games, so it'd be 9-2. 9-2 in the non-conference with wins over Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. I think you'd argue that's a heck of a non-conference, all things considered, losing Zach Edey. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a ton to add. Like, I haven't watched as much Texas A&M. I was going to say as I'd hope, but I don't enjoy watching Texas A&M. So
neither do I.
You're the one driving all the way there to see.
And the craziest part is I've seen A&M already twice in Vegas. Yeah, twice. So I don't know what I'm doing this to myself for. But I am.
Is there like a morning game in Chicago you could have done instead?
It would actually be a little tighter because
Wichita State at DePaul is Saturday.
Correct. But I think that's a noon Central tip or noon Eastern. And it's a slightly shorter drive from Indianapolis to Champaign than it is from Chicago to Champaign.
Yeah, you also don't want to risk that Chicago traffic at all ever, even if it is a Saturday afternoon.
Correct. But no, I'll be burning it. And then 2 hours to Champaign from Gainbridge on midday on what's it called? Midday Saturday.
I've done plenty of those drives in between games where I am just like booking it down the highway, going way faster than I should.
So,
all right. What else? This is Saturday. Auburn, Ohio State, St. Mary's, Boise. Sam, you pick one here. Florida, Arizona State. Interesting one.
I want to talk a little bit about St. Bonaventure and Providence because, Kevin, you saw Providence last night. They are certainly a basketball team. St. Bonaventure is in position to, like, they're 9-1. Their only loss is a 5-point neutral loss to Utah State. If they can come out of Mohegan Sun with a win on Saturday, then avoid disaster against the two MAC teams coming up on their schedule, which has been a problem for them over the last few years, then they can legitimately start to build up an at-large case, because if they come out of this non-conference slate at 12-1, they now obviously they wouldn't have big wins, but they also wouldn't have any bad losses, and the A10 might have enough, if they can be at the top of that league or near the top of that league, might have enough with how good the top and middle of that league has been to maybe build up a resume. And even if they don't have a chance to build up a resume, it would be a big resume boost for the A10 itself. I was listening to the 3-Bid League pod earlier this week, and they were kind of talking about, hey, if you have teams like, even if St. Bonaventure or teams like that, like George Mason, aren't at-large contenders themselves, they could be really good wins, or at least like notable wins for at-large contenders, versus what the A10 has looked like over the past few years, where they haven't really had those types of opportunities. And I mean, this St. Bonaventure team just straight up might be better at basketball than Providence. They've found a lineup that works with Moore and Council and Bowen and Brown and Lajay Jones. They are really tough defensively. And they're physical, they're strong, and they've got guards that I think can play. So St. Bonaventure is a really interesting team this year. I'm not sure if they are. I don't think they're at large caliber. I don't think they're really close to that. But I think that it would be notable for them if they can start building up a resume. This would be their biggest win, which would be a little bit interesting, which would not be a great look at this point in the season. But again, no bad losses yet, and kind of a team that has been a little bit under the radar, I think, this year.
The wins above bubble thing, I think it's going to help all these A10 teams. Like, if you're Bonaventure and you're like, yeah, they haven't actually beaten anyone yet, but like if you have pieced together this kind of hodgepodge of sort of top 150 to 175 wins, which they sort of have with Florida Gulf Coast and Cal State Northridge and Bryant and Northern Iowa, and there'll be a few of those in the A10 as well, obviously. Like, I do think that's the one thing maybe to consider with some of these A10 teams whose resumes look a little soft, is maybe the metrics may end up liking their resumes by tournament time, even if they haven't beaten anyone like substantial. Providence is very much a work in progress. Had to have it yesterday, found a way to. It was not pretty. I was there, gracing Wintrust Arena with my presence. Besley Joseph was really good. They need to continue that from him. If him and Pierre play well, and then you have Hopkins to kind of attack the rim and be aggressive, you at least have some sort of puncher's chance in a down Big East to battle your way through. But there's just a decent amount of dead weight here roster wise, guys that just don't make a ton of impact play to play, and they just got to find a way. You're 0-2 against the A10. If you're Providence right now, that can't be 0-3. If you have any aspirations of playing in March. It's a big one. Mohegan Sun will have a lot of drunk Bonaventure fans and a lot of drunk Friar fans. So good day of business for folks out there. But otherwise,
they
not much to say.
Certain people might lose a lot of money at the casino.
I wish. Yeah, be great.
But I do think that's kind of like, again, kind of like northeast part of the country. So I'll have my eyes on it. A northeast game that I will not at all have my eyes on is Georgetown-Syracuse. I think that anyone that does have their eyes on it should immediately wash their eyes after the game. That is going to be a disgusting watch. So, yeah.
I don't have any thoughts. Yeah, it seems like a real bad one. So,
yeah, you shouldn't have any thoughts. Crosstown shootout, and what about crosstown shootout and bluegrass game? Does that rivalry have a name?
I forget. I think it does, but I would say on the Cincinnati front, Cincinnati Xavier is I would say low key. That's maybe the most pressure packed game of the weekend. Wes Miller has not beaten Xavier in his tenure. This is his best team yet. They have the Villanova loss. They've beaten no one. All right, prove something, right? And if you're Xavier, you're staring down potentially being on the bubble. Here's an opportunity for what looks like a premier win metrics-wise. I mean, Cincinnati is 17th in Ken Palm, you play them on the road. Obviously, there'll be Xavier fans in the building, but if you find a way to win that on the road, that could be the signature win. You walk out of non-conference play with something in your back pocket. That would be a big step. So,
they have a couple huge opportunities coming up. They have obviously this game at Cincinnati. Then they go to the XL Center next Wednesday. Then they host Marquette. If they are there's a chance they can go 0-3 in those games, and if they do, they would be walking into the new year without a big win. And in this Big East, it could be a little difficult to kind of build up that resume if they don't have anything in the first half of the season.
How about UC
especially
Irvine?
The metrics have also gotten really down on Xavier right now. They're all the way down to 61 at Ken Palm. This was a team that a lot of people thought was a top 25 team preseason. And now they're without Trey Green. We know they're without Lassana Traore. So they're down a couple guys. They're still they still have a lot of guys, but they're maybe not as deep as what we thought they were going to be. When we kind of looked at that roster in the preseason, it was like, wow, there's so many guys. They're 253rd in bench minutes.
How about UC Irvine? Underdogs via Ken Palm in one game the rest of the season at the moment, and that is this Saturday at Oregon State.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It also starts a stretch of games for UC Irvine where they play, I think it's 7 of 8 on the road.
Yeah.
Which
they've already won 3 true road games too.
Yeah, very challenging. Although, that Duquesne game, the refs could throw on Duquesne jerseys. I'm not sure what difference it would make. That team is so bad. But yeah, this is, right now UC Irvine is projected on Ken Palm to finish the season 28-4 and 17-3. And if they do that and their metrics are also, they improve from this point, which they obviously probably would, you get to a position that Indiana State was kind of in last year, where metrics like record's really good, but you lack a lot of marquee wins, and the Big West is as solid as that league is. It's not going to provide what the MVC had last year, and Indiana State obviously missed the tournament, albeit a loaded bubble.
Yeah,
that's a big one.
That's the one thing I keep trying to remind people with the Indiana State thing, and really all bubble conversations last year, like the Big East got 3 bids last year. Why would they get more this year? It's like, well, the tournament's different. It's like it's very possible the Big East is a 3-bid league again if 5 bids vanish on Selection Sunday. Yeah, that is a possibility. Yes, mm-hmm. I'll concede that as not being out of the realm of possibility. But yeah, it would be interesting if they could post a number. I think the general kind of at-large discussions with teams like that sort of become pointless, at least at this point of the year, just because you're sitting here staring down and you're like, oh, if they win 18 of 19 here, then they can avoid having to win 3 in a row against teams they should beat, right? There is no Drake to the Indiana State in this equation, right?
Yeah.
I think, if you're in a one bid league,
you win it. UC San Diego's 87th in Ken Palm.
They're very good, right? It's 100%. But that my point being just it's at the end of the day, if you're Irvine, your easiest path is winning the conference tournament. Yeah. If you want to post a number anyway and give yourself a little bit of possibility if things fall apart, great. If you also want to post that number to potentially get an 11 seed or a 10 seed or something, great. Again, but Oregon State's an interesting game. Oregon State's sneaky good, and people haven't really talked about it, but they did a great job with their portal and international guys, and they're a top 75 Ken Palm team. Not sure how real that is, but they've beaten up the teams they're supposed to beat up and hung around with the teams they're supposed to hang around with. So Saturday will be interesting, and WCC league wide will be interesting once that league's conference play breaks out. If you have 6 or 7 somewhat relevant basketball teams for the first time.
I think once Cedric Coward gets back, Washington State it could be really good too. I mean, they are really good without him, but like they could be an at-large threat with him. They've started to build up a resume in themselves. Bradley's a win of note. Nevada's a win of note. Boise State's a win of note. They have 3 more games before WCC play starts, and the WCC will this year provide opportunities for teams because you have I think 5-6 teams in the top 100. Yeah, you have 6 teams in the top 100 right now.
Sam, any Syracuse Georgetown thoughts?
We've already gone over that. I have none. The one thing I will there's one thing I will say. I did ask Jair Davis last night if he had any relationship with Ed Cooley because he played for Ed at Providence for a year, redshirted. And based on his answer, I don't think the split was very amicable, is what I'll say. So it could be a big Jair Davis game. Could also be a...
That's the only non-amicable split Ed Cooley's ever had.
Yeah. Just some other games of note. We didn't really get into Louisville and Kentucky. Jonathan, if you kind of want to jump in and say anything about that.
Just don't think Louisville's healthier enough to play in these kind of games right now.
Are we kind of
they're missing too many guys?
Are we going to kind of declare Louisville's season kind of lost already, though? Like with how many guys that have gone down and the way they want to play?
Like, you've lost 3 in a row. You haven't lost a game to a bad team yet, but you're sitting at 5-4. Right now they're tied with UTEP at home. As that game's approaching halftime, they just I think this roster was built to for Keyshawn Pryor and Abubakar Traore to have big roles, and when those guys are not playing now.
Yeah. The hope is Traore at least will be back somewhat soon. Obviously, the other guys are lost, but yeah, if you're Louisville, at least right now, you're sort of just in survival mode. If this game was at Louisville, I could see them beating Kentucky on the road. It's gonna be really hard, but yeah, you got to find a way to beat UTEP. Got to find a way to beat Florida State. Got to get some big ones at home. Right when Carolina comes to town, like that's a winnable game on New Year's Day. That's a game. Clemson at home is a game that's winnable. Like hope that you can survive and post that 13-7 or something in the ACC and be in the conversation, but easier said than done given just the roster limitations at the moment.
I do think that if Pryor had gotten hurt a couple weeks later, now or something like that, and they had him for Ole Miss and Duke, even at 5-4, they probably would have been competitive enough, or maybe have even beaten Duke, and we probably wouldn't be having this exact same conversation. Because with this roster, I don't think they'll be downright awful in ACC play, just because the league's so bad.
Jonathan, there is a notable Valley game on Saturday. If you would like to do a little Valley update here, I will allow you to.
Yeah, I'm only gonna talk about this one real game because I haven't done exactly deep dives on the other teams playing this weekend and on Saturday for the Valley. But yeah, Murray State, big opportunity for them at Western Kentucky. Was that the one you were talking about?
That was not the one I was
talking about. Bradley Santa Clara, weren't you?
It was.
Okay, I'll talk about both then. So Murray State, Western Kentucky, this is a big opportunity. It's in that Western Kentucky, I think, in Bowling Green, or at least, at a neutral site near Western Kentucky. I think Western Kentucky is pretty good. They lost that opener, those first 2 games to Wichita State and Grand Canyon, but they've started playing better as of late, and part of that is the emergence of Julius Thedford, who was a top 100 freshman for me. Murray State, I've said it a billion times, it's all about consistency with them. You go out and play really well for 30 minutes against Pitt on the road, and then you beat Middle Tennessee State by 19 on the road, and then you lose at home to Utah Valley, who's not terrible, but still not a great loss. You have those types of games, and then you beat Evansville, who hasn't been very good, by 2 at home. So predicting what you're going to get out of Murray State on a night-to-night basis is near impossible. They're going to beat some pretty good teams in the Valley, and they'll lose to some pretty bad ones. That's just the nature of how they are. And I do think that this roster is more talented than they had a year ago, but it doesn't seem like the theme of their season will change overall. And then, yeah, Bradley Santa Clara is a game I had circled since, it first kind of came out. Bradley, this game is in Nevada, so not really a semi-road game for Bradley, but they got to travel
Santa Clara in Vegas. Nobody's going to be at this game.
Yeah, but yeah, what my bold prediction for Bradley in the preseason was that they would enter conference play with only one loss, which meant that they had to likely win 2 out of 3 against Washington State, Santa Clara, and San Francisco. They lost the one at Washington State. Washington State is better than I thought they would be. And now you have the Santa Clara and San Francisco games that I think are both winnable. This is a really deep Bradley team. They've gotten production out of all sorts of guys that I expected and didn't expect. Corey Thomas has not nearly made the impact that I thought he would, but he's been okay when he's been in the game. And Jaquan Johnson has actually been fairly good the freshman when he's been in the game. So I think Bradley goes out to Nevada and gets a win here over a Santa Clara team that, at least when I've watched them, have been fairly one-dimensional.
All right, Jonathan. Thank you for the Valley update.
Of course.
Just a couple more games to go over kind of quickly before we get going. St. Mary's, Boise State. If anyone just kind of like some popcorn reading here. If anyone has anything, you guys can jump in.
Boise really needs that.
Yeah, like really, and like I think this St. Mary's team is like they looked borderline top 25. They have gotten real production from Mikey Lewis off the bench. It's given them another look, and I do like this St. Mary's team a lot more than I thought I would. Maybe I should have expected that because it seems to happen every year. Florida and Arizona State. Anybody with any thoughts on that?
Good test for Arizona State. Good test for Florida. Probably the best team that Florida's played.
Yeah.
I think Florida's the better team. I think Florida wins it, but wouldn't be shocked if it's closer. But interested to see how the ASU young guys handle a moment like this against a high-level team in an NBA arena. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, ASU has a level of talent that I don't think Florida has seen yet. Not to say that Arizona State's talent's tremendous, but they have future NBA guys on the roster.
They're talented. They're really talented.
I'm most interested in making sure that Chris Williams has lights on in the facility and whatnot. So,
what's the next one? Oklahoma State. I am allowed to watch this game. It is as the boycott has ended with Oklahoma State. I don't think I'll need to watch this one though. I will be at the Garden while it's on, but Oklahoma looking to stay undefeated. This is their first big test outside of Atlantis. It's their first game away from home outside of Atlantis. Their first game against Oklahoma State since moving to the SEC and since Oklahoma State hired Steve Lutz. Definitely an opportunity for Oklahoma State to kind of make some sort of statement. I don't think Oklahoma's quite as good as their record, but I also think that they should be able to win this game.
Yeah, I think that this is an important 2-game stretch here for Oklahoma. You play 2 neutral games, one against a rival that is, I don't know how much Oklahoma State's players really care that Oklahoma left the Big 12, but there is that sort of element to it. And then you have Michigan next week, who at a neutral is it in Charlotte? Is that where that is? Yeah, it is. It is in Charlotte. So, yeah, if you get out of those two with 2 more wins and you get to 11-0, people are really going to start to take even more notice of you.
Wichita State DePaul should be a fun one. I think both of these teams. I really like this Wichita State team. Justin Hill has been really good. Corey Washington has been really good. They got completely. I'm not even going to try and think of an adjective to describe that Florida game or a verb. It was brutal, but I think that this DePaul game, I mean, on both sides, I just think this is going to be a really competitive basketball game. Anyone have any thoughts?
Not really. I mean,
No.
See what happens.
For Georgia, Deshane Montgomery's first game. This is also part of that Atlanta. Looks like there's 3 games in Atlanta. I didn't realize that. I thought it was just 2. But it's the third game of that triple header. And Deshane Montgomery's first game for the Bulldogs. It'll be against Grand Canyon. So they do have to deal with all the weapons that GCU can throw their way and the athleticism they throw their way. And GCU kind of really needs it. They have not been as good this year as they were last year. They're 93 this year. They were 52 last year. KenPom. At this point last year, they were 64-ish in KenPom. Their only loss was South Carolina this year. They have the UC Davis loss. I don't think Grand Canyon's really building up an at-large case. They probably are still clearly the best team in that league. But they could really use this win. And then they play Louisiana Tech on Monday. So if they really need some juice right now.
Yeah, I had a member of the Georgia staff tell me, and I told Sam this on the side, that Deshane Montgomery is their most well-rounded guard. So that's probably a bigger impact addition than I think a lot of people realize.
Insane.
Be interesting to see him, see how quickly he fits in. But it's an interesting group already, and add him into the mix. Georgia gets that much tougher to deal with. Basically a home game in Atlanta. GCU's talented, but hasn't quite hit their stride yet. I think still kind of finding their identity with new role players plugged in here and there, and getting Grant Foster going. He's been somewhat uncharacteristically quiet at times, so should be a good one.
And then we get McNeese, Mississippi State in the Elvis Presley Center in Tupelo to kind of steal Gary Parrish's bit. Fortunately, Elvis Presley's alma mater, UMass Lowell, is not part of this. Is not part of this game, but this should be a fun, an interesting battle. I've been talking about how Mississippi State is kind of just evolving throughout the years with Chris Jans. They're just so much better offensively than they have been. McNeese, they haven't been what we thought they were going to be. They have 4 losses already, but we know how talented they are. They're still in the top 100 in KenPom. I don't think McNeese is going to have much of a chance to win this game, but this is their their at-large chance. They're obviously completely gone, but I still think it's a good basketball team, and should be an interesting basketball game to just have an eye on.
Yeah, this game and the Grand Canyon Georgia game were probably a lot more intriguing a month and a half ago, when people were still kind of throwing around narratives that these teams could get at-large bids, and it was certainly possible before the season. But McNeese has taken some tough L's, and Grand Canyon losing that game to UC Davis didn't exactly help the cause.
You know what I just remembered right now? There was a tweet in the offseason. I think it was John Fendler sent it out. He was like, "Hey, GCU, and McNeese, we know how good. I get how good these rosters are, but they are not going to improve from last year. It's just so hard to do that when you're a mid-major." And he's been spot on with that so far. And I still think those are dangerous basketball teams. Those teams are really talented. Obviously, they have a lot more money invested in them than most programs in their leagues. But I'm definitely fascinated to see how they kind of develop throughout the season. Just kind of looking down the list of games. Nothing really catching my eye the further down we go. LIU against Mizzou with Jonathan.
Oh, yeah. LIU actually, almost beat UMass Lowell tonight.
That game's not over yet. There's still 8 seconds left.
65-62 with 35 seconds left.
8 seconds left. It's on right now. UMass Lowell going to the line.
hangover spot for Mizzou after the big win, maybe.
You'd have to be more than hungover to lose to LIU.
Yeah. As someone who's seen LIU play in person a whole bunch over the last few years, yeah.
Hey, they've been better.
They have been. I actually saw them earlier this year, and they actually looked like a basketball team that cared about basketball. They were chanting defense on the bench. That was new. But that was about that's and Malachi Davis is pretty good, but that's about all I can say about
little things.
This. Yeah, little things, small things. Just kind of moving on. Anything? Some Sunday. Are you going to be in Milwaukee?
I will be. Yeah, unclear if I make it to game 1. Depends how tired I am from the doubleheader.
But game 2 is the game to have an
eye on. Yeah, well, game 2 is there's 3 games. So.
What's game 1?
Akron versus Milwaukee.
Yeah. Okay.
Bizarre.
So
I don't know
game
why.
3 is the game to have an eye on.
Yeah, game 3 is the game to have an eye on. Jaden Dawson out 4 to 6 weeks for the Ramblers. San Francisco's really good. Be a heck of a challenge, but excited to see how Loyola handles their highest level test yet. They're a really good team. Their balance is valuable. I think their positional size will help them in San Francisco quite a bit. Northwestern Georgia Tech. I don't know if JV McCollum's playing. Seems like he might be concussed again. I've had enough experience to know when JV McCollum is absent for mysterious circumstances, it probably means he hit his head on something. So we'll see if he's back. If he's not, that's all right. We'll get to watch my boy Nate George against the Northwestern Wildcats.
Central Connecticut will look to go 3-0 against the A10. They play at Rhode Island on Sunday, as well as there's a Old Dominion plays basketball, so there will be a text exchange between one of us about Sean Dura-Gordon, most likely. So Vermont Colgate, which again another game a month and a half ago looked a lot better than it does right now. Colgate really struggled so far this year. They are 2-8, but they've been hurt. They actually are playing Kentucky tonight. Is that right now? Yes, that is starting right now. So they'll be 2-9 when this game tips off. Jeff Woodward has been out for a while. Just kind of disappointing for them. I don't think they're quite as good as they have been in the past couple of years.
Is it the Cyhawk game tomorrow?
Yes, Cyhawk. We didn't get to that, but I was kind of talking about Colgate. Go ahead, talk about Cyhawk. There's nothing more to say about Colgate.
I'm not sure what to make of this Iowa team yet. I was really high on them in the preseason, and I don't think I don't think the Utah State or Michigan loss was bad, but they also don't really have a signature win yet, and they probably should have lost to Northwestern.
Anything else on that game?
Sam, I gotta start getting going. So
all right. So anything else to say before we get going here? I'm just trying to think. Indiana, Nebraska, BU, Merrimack. Oh, South Dakota State, Colorado is interesting on Friday night. But yeah, that's kind of about it. We'll probably do a show Sunday night, right, Jonathan?
Should work.
So I think that'll do it. Wait, I've kind of taken over hosting duties. So does that mean, Jonathan, you're finishing, or am I finishing?
You are.
Okay. If you came to hear about Tyler Self and where he's working, you came to the right place. If you came to hear about Sean Dura-Gordon, you came to the right place. And if you came to hear about the latest happenings with Caleb Grill, you came to the right place. This is season 5, episode 42 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bitch Stealers. Thank you so much to Kevin Sweeney for joining. The Valley update has been on the screen for far too long. We will see you next time.